January 23rd, 2020. All right, guys, welcome back today, and we're going to do a fear versus freedom style presentation on some more environmental exposures that are every day affecting your life in ways you never knew. My name is David Cromar. Let's jump into it. We've got a lot to discuss, and so today's topic, we are going to be looking at, let me jump over here, genetically modified organisms. OMG, we're talking GMOs. Don't buy the lies. Okay, what do I mean by that? Don't buy the lies. Every article, and I get them all the time, GMOs and vaccines are like two of the most common articles that are popping up in my feed all the time, and it's so easy to spot the social engineering in these articles, trying to push us to really feel stupid if you doubt the safety of genetically modified foods. The crazy thing is they're just bringing more attention to it because as I've discussed this topic with family members and friends, people don't even know what they are. Okay? They just go to the store and they buy whatever's there and they just think it's food. Well, guess what? It's not. Okay, the majority of the food that you're buying at the grocery store is man-made or genetically modified and is extremely, extremely dangerous. Let's look at it. So what is a GMO? A genetically modified organism is a plant, animal, microorganism, or other organism whose genetic makeup has been modified in a laboratory using specific genetic engineering or transgenic technologies. And the majority of our food out there is transgenic, and you'll see what we're talking about. This created combination of plant, animal, bacteria, and virus genes do not occur in nature. Okay, they do not naturally happen. There is tons of evolutionary genetic modifications that happen naturally via bacteria bringing in certain genes into a plant or thing that is, let's just say, allowed in nature. GMOs are things that would never happen in nature, that is 100% controlled in the lab by man, by science. Okay. These are things that cannot happen through traditional crossbreeding methods or anything like that. So among the manipulations included within genetically modified organisms are transferring of genes from related and even totally unrelated organisms, modifying information in a gene called gene editing. It's a new CRISPR technology that they're using even on human babies. It's very unethical. Moving, deleting, or multiplying genes within a living organism, splicing together pieces of existing genes, or constructing completely new genes. Now, genetic engineering is very different from natural conventional plant breeding and poses special risks, as is recognized in the national and international biosafety laws. The genetic engineering and associated tissue culture processes are highly mutagenic, leading to unpredictable changes in the DNA, the RNA, protein unfolding of the resulting GM crop that can lead to unexpected toxic, epigenetic, allergenic, and nutritional effects. Once the genetics of the plants have been altered, they will contaminate non-GMO plants via cross-pollination, and it cannot be reversed. This is really important to understand because for those of us that are looking at the science and understand the huge risk and unpredictability of these genetically modified plants, and we want heirloom seeds, we want natural organic food, well, that's being threatened just by the fact that these genetically modified plants exist, because via cross-pollination the traits of the GMO will take over that heirloom plant and be converted, and it can't be reversed, and we have true threat of losing the natural crop. All right, herbicide resist. Okay, so there's different types of genetically modified food. There's mainly two categories, right? Herbicide resistance and then Bt toxin crops. So herbicide resistant is they're taking genes, inserting it into the genome of the plant to make it so that it won't die from being sprayed with weed killer, right? Roundup, active ingredient, glyphosate. But Roundup is much more toxic because it has like 1,000 other ingredients. Bt toxin is where you actually insert a gene that controls the expression and production of the specific phytoalexin which is a natural pesticide produced by the plant. And so we modify the plant and just rev this up, the production up, so that if pests try to eat the plant, they basically die. Their stomach explodes and they die. Sounds safe, right? We should eat it too. No? Maybe we'll just feed it to the cows and the pigs and the chickens and then eat them. That won't hurt us, right? All right. So, and then some of the plants actually will stack both types of traits into one crop so that it's both herbicide resistant and has increased phytoalexin production. So the phytoalexin, or natural pesticide from the plants, can be carcinogenic on their own, damage human cells, damage our tissues, and even damage our organs and organelles. They even create terminal seeds that can be made to require the farmer to purchase seeds each season so that they can't do their own reseeding. And it's just another way to make money and force the purchase of their seeds, and these agri-companies own the world's agriculture and therefore our futures. Herbicide-resistant plants equals increased exposure and ingestion of these poisons. So in order to get these passed for safety by the FDA, all that's required is for the actual agri-companies that are making these frankenfoods, they do their own safety testing, just like the pharmaceutical companies do their own safety testing, and then they provide their tests to the FDA and they say it's good to go, we don't see anything wrong with it. And what are they doing? They're doing rat studies at 90 days. And they limit it to 90 days because if they look any farther, they're going to see massive health consequences. We're talking kidney, liver damage, organ damage outside of those, including the spleen and the heart and different things like that. And especially tumor growth, especially in women. This is very high estrogenic effects, targeting the mammary glands, a lot of things that you're going to see here. So independent research, very little exists, because if you go after big agriculture, you will be destroyed. You will be attacked and destroyed, and this is exactly what happened in the Seralini study. So what is the Seralini study? Let me go back. Okay. What is happening here? When animals were fed a diet consisting of 11 to 33% GMO corn for 2 years, they followed the entire life cycle of the rats. The non-GMO corn group, just eating normal corn, had a natural death rate of 20% of the females and 30% of the males that died, before the final 2-year follow-up period. But in the genetically modified corn-eating rats, they had a death rate of 70% of the females and 50% of the males that died before the 2 years was up. So that is a statistically significant increase in the death rate. And that's even for those, they split it up in multiple groups, and that was even the same case for those in the low-dose group. So whether they're eating high-dose GMO or even low-dose GMO, they still had those higher death rates. Okay. The first rats to die were always females, no matter what the group, less than a year after starting the diet. Well, for the GMO-fed rats. In less than a year, these rats started to die off with massive, massive breast tumors that they had. So the Roundup and the GMO process is also obviously triggering massive endocrine disruption and specifically targeting the mammary glands. Now, females on the diet at 21 months had a death rate that was 6 times higher than the normal diet. So 6 times higher death rate for the girls than the non-GMO plants. And then things that they saw in both groups, liver and kidney disease, skin cancers for both sexes, and then breast and ovarian tumors, specifically, of course, in the females at very, very high rates and very aggressive tumors. So important things to note here is the tumor sizes were not dose dependent. So tumors in even the low dose group were just as big as the high dose group. So bottom line is you want to avoid exposure altogether from GMOs. Tumors occurred 5 times more in females than males. 90% of the tumors in females were breast tumors. 90%. And I think every single one of you watching has a friend or family member that is currently battling breast cancer right now and has died from breast cancer. Breast cancer awareness is everywhere, and the incidences have skyrocketed since the introduction of GMO. The majority of tumors appeared after 18 months. That's midlife for humans, guys, which means you're going to be eating this crap for decades before the majority of us start seeing the consequence of it. And then we're just going to be thinking, well, it can't be that because I've been eating it forever. Bottom line, those 90-day studies are not sufficient. The earliest a tumor appeared was at 4 months, which is still way past the 90 days that the industry used for their safety studies. So what's the GMO prevalence in your actual diet? Right? How much of the food that you're eating today is number 1, genetically modified, and number 2, being sprayed with Roundup? Let's look at the numbers. Corn, 92% of the corn grown in the U.S. is genetically modified. And this comes from numbers as of 2018. 94% of the U.S. soy is genetically modified. Cotton, 94% is genetically modified. And they just approved cotton seeds as a protein source for people. Sugar beets, 98.5% of the U.S. sugar beets are genetically modified to be Roundup resistant. All of these so far have Roundup resistant crops as well as Bt toxin. Corn and soy have both. And then canola. How many of you cook with canola oil? This is destroying your health, not even because it's GMO. It's a horrible fat as well as a horrible omega fatty acid profile. But 95% of the canola in the United States is GMO as of 2018. What else is GMO? We have zucchini, yellow squash, alfalfa. There's thousands of acreage of alfalfa that's genetically modified. There's many others like papaya and potatoes and all kinds of different GMOs, and there's a lot more to come. There's hundreds of proposed GMOs that are in the process of trying to get approval. Celery was a massive fail, this GMO celery that they created. The farmers would go harvest it and their hands would get massive burns, and if you ate it, you'd get burns down your throat. GMOs are extremely dangerous. One of the things to pay attention to is every one of these foods, corn, soy, sugar, canola, and they're in every piece of food you pick up off the shelf. You can't buy a processed food that doesn't have either corn or corn syrup, soy or soy oil, isolated soy proteins, and sugar. Okay, over half of the sugar in all of our foods is going to come from the sugar beets because it's easier to grow, it's easier to harvest, and they have bigger profit margins. So the other one that's coming is cannabis. If you're paying attention to the cannabis market, well, politically, all of a sudden everybody has flip-flopped. And everyone that was against cannabis is overnight all of a sudden for it. And you better understand that that is only because industry is ready to capitalize on the market. Okay? They got rid of it because it was a threat to the paper, to the clothing, to the medical industry. They knew the power of cannabis. They demonized it. They made it illegal. Now that more and more people have actually looked at the science, looked at the safety profile, understand that this plant is a miracle and there's no way of getting around that fact, they've been holding off until they have everything they need to have genetically modified strains of cannabis ready to go, and they're going to own the market. They're going to own the market. That is why politically, everyone's on board. They're ready to capitalize on the financial gain. So this is a huge, huge threat, these GMOs, especially to our health, but especially to babies. Babies are extremely sensitive to this. And every single baby formula on the market, when you go look through the shelves and you pick one up and you start looking through the ingredients, number one ingredient in every single one of these formulas is either corn syrup, right? Pulling in the carbohydrates, or soy-based. Okay, so not only are you getting genetically modified epigenetic effects from the genetic modification itself, but you're getting extremely high levels of Roundup in the baby's formula, destroying their gut as it's supposed to be developing. This is ridiculous and it's scary. The majority of baby formula are corn syrup or soy-based. Even natural formulas contain high levels of fluoride, aluminum, and glutamate. But then you add the GMO component on top of that, which multiplies the risk factors, increasing poor health outcomes in our babies. Remember, guys, breast is best, but if you can't breastfeed, your next best option is going to be a natural, non-GMO goat formula. I highly recommend Cabrita, or there's another one that's organic that's good, but these are going to be best on the baby's tummy. They're going to be the only formulas in the United States that are glyphosate-free. I think Cabrita is the brand that is certified as like the only one that's glyphosate-free. Not only that, it has a better milk protein, and the number one source of carbohydrate in there is coming from lactose, not corn syrup. So do your research there and figure out what you want to do. If you don't have the ability or capacity to breastfeed, look at either like a wet nurse to gain all the benefits from human milk, or goat milk formula. That's just a suggestion. I'm not a doctor. All right. So additional detrimental impacts of GMOs. Not only do they damage the liver and kidneys, but also the adrenals, which is going to affect cortisol and hormone production, your heart, your lungs, your intestines, your pancreas, your spleen. They contribute to leaky gut, to your ability to fight infections from damaging your microbiome. Cellular damage to the mitochondria, our cell membranes, our chromosomes, and more. Gene manipulation or insertion of the GMO can disrupt natural balances of genes. And when we eat these foods, this alters our genetic expression. So altering the nutrition profile of the plant can have epigenetic or gene expression modulating effects in our bodies, which can have detrimental effects transgenerationally. If you look up transgenerational studies of glyphosate, you're going to find that the majority of these studies show that these type of detrimental effects have a cascade through up to 3-4 generations down the line. So they haven't been around that long. We're just starting to see the compacting effects generationally that these GMOs are having. Let me see what time it is. 2. Okay. I've got to be done soon. So what can you do about this? You have options. You have control. Luckily, we do have regulatory agencies that are kind of, it's a double-edged sword, because on one hand, they're letting a lot go that they shouldn't, and on the other, are also trying to protect you. So we do have a lot of great labeling here in the United States. We have the Non-GMO Verified Project. We have organic, as well as, well, lots of great labeling. I would look for USDA certified organic, but you can eat organic to avoid the gene modifications and reduce the pesticide and herbicide exposure. You can also build up your antioxidant network by eating nutrient-rich whole foods, organic of course, and if you need to, you can supplement if necessary with things like vitamin E, where you're getting both the tocopherol and tocotrienol combined, and flavonoids that are antioxidants like quercetin. Vitamin C is a great antioxidant. A lot of these things occur naturally in our foods as long as you're eating a diverse, whole food-based diet. You're going to have some great opportunities to be healthy. So anyway, that was just a quick highlights of why they're dangerous. Let's look at the science. Let's jump into the science. So I mentioned the Seralini study. And what you're going to hear in the media, if you try to look this up, is that's been debunked, and the Seralini study didn't use the right type of rats, or all these BS reasons why it was invalid and then ended up getting retracted. So this was published in November of 2012, retracted in November of 2013, almost exactly a year from its publication date. Now you better bet, as soon as it got published, Monsanto has, and all the big ag, they have like an army of like non-governmental organizations ready to just attack anybody that questions their science. And that's exactly what happened to Seralini. So as soon as the retraction happened, people started writing into the editors of this journal. And a lot of these, if you go through and read some of these letters to the editor, let me see if I can come in here. Okay. Letters to the editor, you're gonna read a lot of them that were in favor of the study and against the retraction of the paper, saying, hey, the science here was sound. I read through it. They did a great job. And this is the only study looking at long-term full life risks of GMO. This needs to be here. This needs to be published. And then if you keep looking through the letters to the editor, then a lot of them also came from people that are going, this study was horrible. I can't believe the fraudulent information and blah, blah, blah. But every claim they're making is not backed when you actually look over the study. And so I started looking into the people, right? And you can Google their name and just type in anybody, Dale Sanders, David Tribe, ties to Monsanto. And you can start finding, so here's one where they're just going on about how this paper was horrible. And look it up and you can see, okay, this David Tribe was one of the founders of Academics Review. And so this article is great. It shows the making of a Monsanto front group. So Academics Review is a nonprofit organization launched in 2012, claims to be an independent group, but documents obtained by U.S. Right to Know revealed it is a front group set up with help from Monsanto. The Academics Review website described its founders as two independent professors, Bruce Chassey and David Tribe. And they say Academics Review only accepts unrestricted donations from non-corporate sources to support our work. Is that true? Tax records show that the primary funder of Academics Review has been the Council for Biotechnology Information, which is a trade association that is funded and run by the largest agriculture companies, BASF, Bayer, Dow DuPont, Monsanto, and Syngenta. And now Bayer and Monsanto are now one because Bayer acquired Monsanto and all the headaches that come with it as people are starting to become wise to the dangers of GMO and Roundup. So all you have to do is a little due diligence, do a little research, start connecting dots, and you'll see that the attacks that this study got all came from industry. And it resulted in so much pressure on the editors that they retracted the study. And in this, as a result of that, there was a rebuttal by Seralini and several other scientists that this study says conflicts of interest, confidentiality, and censorship in health risk assessment, the example of an herbicide and a GMO. This is a great read, kind of debunking all the reasons that the study got retracted. And if we look at some of the things stated here, okay. The scientific remarks concentrated on the supposedly inadequate choice of Sprague Dawley rat strain is, however, a classic model of toxicology. The Sprague Dawley strain was also used by Monsanto in its own 90-day test on the exact same corn. In addition, Monsanto measured biochemically the same number of rats per group in their experiment that we did. Thus, with regard to blood and urine biochemistry, Monsanto gathered data from the same number of rats that we did. So they're showing that they've been attacked by the type of rat that they used, the number of rats in each group, but they actually copied the exact same methods that Monsanto used in their 90-day studies, but took it out to 2 years and showed all of the damage that was done. Again, it is for a further study to build on the report finding and arrive at a more conclusive position. In contrast with our study measuring toxicity, the Monsanto study reporting safety with the same number and the same strain of rat but limited to 90 days is not subject to the same controversy. That doesn't make sense. It really doesn't. So you'll hear in the mainstream media and in articles that there's the only science that exists supports safety profile of GMO. There's no such thing as any science that shows any negative reactions to GMO, and that is false. Let me just show you. They're going to say that's been retracted and debunked. Well, did you know? Probably not, because it didn't make it into the mainstream news. that a year after the retraction, or over the year and a half after the retraction, Seralini's team won 2 separate defamation cases in court, vindicating their work. And even though this article was retracted by industry pressure, it did end up getting republished in 2014 and still stands as solid science that GMOs are extremely, extremely dangerous. And this study is where a lot of the information in the PowerPoint slides came from. Okay, so you should read it. Republished study, PMID number 277-52412. Again, we'll just scroll through, show you that you're seeing kidneys destroyed, livers destroyed, in huge increases in estrogen, decreases in testosterone in the males, massive tumor increases in the GMO and in the Roundup fed group and in the GMO plus Roundup group. The males mainly just seeing the kidney and liver damage as well as skin cancer. I mean, look at these tumors in these rats. This killed them. It's so gross. It just scrolled up when I hit something here. But yeah, so these massive increases in autoimmune disease, in gastrointestinal disease, and especially in female mammary gland tumors. It's our food chain. It's our vaccines. It is the dangers of man's desire to play God and control everything. It's horrible. Okay, moving on. So let's look at if they know they're safe, there's no fear to protect GMO from litigation, right? Well, back in 2013, after the Seralini study was released and all the controversy started blowing up in the media, well, President Obama, in an act back in 2013, snuck some language in without even telling any of the senators before voting that it was in there. Most of them didn't even know that this had been put in there. Slipped some language into a bill that ended up getting passed that gives liability protection to the GMO seeds from any health risks. Kind of sounds like the whole vaccine 1986 vaccine injury compensation program. Liability free. So this says this is how the Monsanto Protection Act snuck into law. Slipped into the Agricultural Appropriation Bill, which passed through Congress in 2013, was a small provision that's a big deal for Monsanto and its opponents. The provision protects genetically modified seeds from litigation in the face of health risks and has thus been dubbed the Monsanto Protection Act. Wait a minute. If genetically modified seeds are safe, why do we need this language to protect them from litigation in the face of health risks? Things to think about. So when you do start following GMO news, what you're going to see all the time is this social justice type narrative that's saying golden rice, like this one they've been trying to pass golden rice for approval for decades, literally decades, and they've never been able to get it through. So who do they blame? Anti-GMO activists, right? It's the golden rice naysayers are ignoring the world's need for nutrition. You're killing people by not allowing this vitamin A enriched rice to grow where these poor people live. At least 200,000 people die every year that GMO golden rice is kept off the market. You sick suckers. I mean, this is January 9th, 2020, right? They're still pushing this so hard and saying that golden rice is a miracle, and so what they're doing is inserting a gene that's up-regulating the production of beta-carotene, turning the rice this golden color. It's the beta-carotene, same thing found in carrots, sweet potatoes, things like that. But it's just getting this light hue of yellow, and it's this very small amount of vitamin A. But what you're going to hear to get the social pressures going to get this approved is you're killing people. All these kids are losing their eyesight because you're blocking GMO golden rice. Blah, 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 blah. Another article from January 17th. GMO crops should become a bigger part of the food system if we want a sustainable society. And then it goes through and talks about the different types of genetic modification. And then it's saying like how selective breeding has changed corn from what it used to be to what it is today. Is saying, see, we've been genetically modifying plants for hundreds and thousands of years. That's totally different than the science used in GMO. Okay, it's blatant manipulation of the genes and unnatural things that can't happen. Goes on talking about the GMO potato and how just because food gets bruised and is aesthetically not pleasing, it gets thrown away, and we can prevent that by making it look pretty. Even though it's still bruising, you don't see it with the GMO russet potatoes and innate potatoes. So talks about that. Talks about the sugar beets and saying, I dare you to see the difference between a sugar molecule from cane sugar and a sugar molecule from genetically modified beets. Well, the molecule is going to be the molecule. The difference is all the other genes that are associated with the sugar, as well as the pesticide that you're spraying on it all year long. They try to, like, again, look over here, not at this issue over here. Again, the beta carotene, the Bt toxin, and they're telling you you're killing the world agriculture if you don't support GMO. That's not true. Organic farming and organic agriculture is better for the farmer, it's better for the land, and it's better for us. A great documentary you could look at is Revolution Food. Great documentary talking about more and more farmers and independent farmers are going organic, and the land is thriving and they're doing great and their families are healthy. So go take a look at that information. Now, back to the golden rice, you're getting guilted saying you're killing all these people, and the vitamin A and additional nutrition from our genetically modified rice is going to save the world. Is that true? Again, challenge the narrative. Go look it up. Guess what? June 3rd, 2018, GMO golden rice offers no nutritional benefit, says the FDA. Okay? Again, industry's been trying to get this approved for decades, but the FDA is looking at this and going, you guys are trying to sell us a vitamin A benefit, but there's not one that exists here. So, in a surprising twist, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration has concluded its consultation process on golden rice by informing its current developers, the International Rice Research Institute, that golden rice does not meet the nutritional requirements to make a health claim. This latest version of the golden rice contains 3 added genes, two specify enzymes in the beta-carotene biosynthesis pathway, and are taken from bacteria and corn. This goes on to talk about how you would have to eat, does it say it here? Yeah, okay. FDA notes that the means of value of beta-carotene, this is paradoxically less beta-carotene, so it was putting off 1.26, I don't know what, is it nanograms? No, that's an ng. Tiny amount. From 1.26, which is lower than the stated 1.6 per gram that it was supposed to do, which means to get any type of nutritional benefit from these low levels of beta-carotene in the rice, a person would have to eat 3.75 kilograms of golden rice per day to get that adequate amount of beta-carotene. That is over 8 pounds of rice every single day. So there's no nutritional benefit, but all the articles are going to tell you that you are a heartless piece of crap for not supporting genetically modified organisms, even though they are killing us all. This is a copy of the actual FDA letter going over that information, saying the beta-carotene, there's no nutritional benefit here in golden rice. Here's another great article. October 22nd, 2018, the genetic engineer himself that created the GMO potatoes that they're worshiping about not bruising and things like that, renounces his work and says he highly regrets what he's done, and he fears the type of health consequences that are happening because of the GMO potato that everybody's eating. Highlights. Dr. Romans developed GMO potatoes for the biotech firm Simplot, but has now renounced his GMO work and written a book about his experiences. He says GMO potatoes, which he called Pandora's potatoes, pose health risks, have The Pandora's potatoes have been commercialized in the U.S. under names such as Innate, Hibernate, and White Russet potatoes. I know you've eaten them. We're eating them every day. These GMO potatoes are marketed as bruise resistant and as healthier to eat than regular potatoes because they contain lower than average levels of natural amino acids that form carcinogenic acrylamide during cooking. He says the GMO potatoes are not truly bruise resistant, but bruise concealing. The concealed bruises can accumulate toxins and pathogens, and their lack of discoloration means that the processors and consumers cannot identify and remove the problematic damaged tissue. We bruise for a reason. Dr. Romans says these toxins and pathogens may pose health risks to consumers. He adds that claims that the GMO potatoes are safer than non-GMO potatoes due to reduced acrylamide has no solid scientific benefit. So there is no anti-tumor benefit there. Mechanisms by which the GM process causes DNA damage can change the plant's composition in unintended ways, resulting in the production of novel toxins and allergens. And it goes on and on. A great article from GMO Science. Genetic engineer renounces his GMO potato. More social justice headlines. Golden rice could save children. You're in the way. More resources for you to go look at what GMOs are, what's the risk, what are your options. Non-GMO project.org. Great information. You can do more studying, look at specific information per crop. Go out there, do your own research. Again, it couldn't be more important that you do. Avoid GMOs at all costs. Eat organic. It's super simple. Yes, it's expensive. Our greatest investment is in our food, but that's because we care about our health outcome and understand the consequences of making these exceptions. So, eat organic. If the organic isn't an option, look for non-GMO. If not, maybe you can find food that's imported from countries that you know don't utilize Roundup and genetically modified engineered foods. So start doing your research, do your due diligence, change your shopping habits, eat clean. Eat clean and natural and organic, and your health will thrive. One last thing, again, great source to lead you directly to information is, again, the Fear versus Freedom channel. Over to the playlists and find the GMO. I've got vaccines, I've got GMOs, I've got measles, smallpox, polio, I mean so many things. Go to the GMO playlist. Learn about the Seralini studies, how many times it's been vindicated, why it was republished. Look at, again, from the mouth of the scientist who did a lot of the glyphosate research, Dr. Stephanie Seneff. Great interview here with Tony Bark. Jeffrey Smith talks about how dozens of diseases were cured just by switching people from conventional groceries over to organic, and tons of them. Great talk there. Just continue doing your research. Look at this information. It's a great playlist. I'll say that. So anyway, there you go. I gotta run. Hope you learned something today. Love you guys.